I stayed in their cult leader's house.
Warren
Jeffs. Yeah,
no way.
I stayed in his house for 2 days. During COVID, I got laid off for a couple of weeks. They called it I got unpaid leave, and then my wife lost her job. So I told my wife, I was like, hey, let's go out west with the kids, and we're never going to get 2 weeks off like this ever again. I was furloughed for 2 weeks. So we packed all our stuff. We packed a bunch of camping gear, and we flew to Rapid City, South Dakota, rented a car, and did this big loop, hit a bunch of national parks, went to the Grand Canyon, went to Yellowstone. So we were kind of just winging it. We didn't have any accommodations. There was like a couple campgrounds, like in Yellowstone, we had reservations because you had to. But we were just getting motor lodges and hotels, Airbnbs, whatever we could as we made this nice circle. So we wanted to go to Bryce and Zion, and I'm looking through Airbnbs and through like hotels.com, and I find this B&B called Most Wanted Bed and Breakfast. And I was like, well, this is cool. So I kind of look at the history of it, and they're like, this is Warren Jeff's old cult compound, and because he had 99 wives, there's 1 million bedrooms, so it's just like a hotel now.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, it was $100 a night. Our room was 3 times the size of this office. It was huge. It had 3 TVs, and I found out later it was Warren Jeff's bedroom. It was called the Most Wanted Suite. Okay. So we go there, and the reason I picked it is because it was kind of like halfway in between Bryce and Zion. So for me, it was perfect. But the town is bizarre. So it's exactly the way you described it, only it's weirder because they have all these like what we would call a shotgun shack, which is you could blast a shotgun through the front door and it would bust out the end of the house. And then there would be these mini mansions. And so what I hypothesized was the mini mansions must have been the husband, and the little were like the sister wives would stay in the little shacks, right? And the reason it was abandoned is because when Jeffs went to prison, there was like a sect of that cult that moved to British Columbia, I believe, right on the Idaho border. And if you go to that city, that's like the new Colorado City up there. And this place is pretty much abandoned. But
yeah, doesn't he have a lot of followers that basically escaped and just kind of like shot all over?
Yeah, but there's still some in Texas, because he built a church in Texas, I believe, and then there's still some that are in Colorado City. The weird thing about fundamentalist Mormons too is they're allowed to drink. So there's a Family Dollar, which is like the only store in Colorado City, Utah, and I took a picture of this. I'll send it to you sometime. But there's a woman in like the conservative Mormon garb, like the flower print dress, like pushing a cart full of White Claws. And I was like, oh man, I didn't even care if she saw me. And if you look at the picture, you could tell she totally saw me take the picture.
It's like you just had to take a photo of like, I need to remember this.
It was crazy. But I have pictures of the whole community. You can go on YouTube where people drive through the town. And it has
creepy. Google Street View throughout the whole town, so like you can go through and just see like, and they're updated photos because someone recently went there in like probably 2023, so you can see the whole city. And it's really, like you said, it's so bizarre because they're not old buildings. It's new infrastructure.
Did you notice the big privacy walls? Like they don't want anybody looking in their backyards. There's like these cinder block walls that are like 6-8 foot high.
And then there's a whole section of the city too where you can tell that that's when crap started to like really flow through the gutter. Because they're like, there's a bunch of buildings that are basically like half under construction, but you can tell that they just got abandoned because they couldn't finish the project because they ran out of money or something. I don't know.
That bed and breakfast is awesome though. Like, quick shout out to Most Wanted B&B. It's still in operation. I got a coffee mug from them that like disintegrated in the dishwasher, so I needed that shirt. But the bizarre thing about that hotel is you walk in and you're like, something's off with this place. You can tell it wasn't supposed to be a hotel. Like the carpet's too plush. There's still a podium. What do you call it that you preach in front of not an altar, but a pulpit. There's still a pulpit in the main area that Warren Jeffs used to preach behind. I got pictures of all this stuff, man.
Wow.
And then the funny thing is there's other travelers that were booking the place, and you could tell they're looking around and they're like, something's not right. And my favorite thing, the 3 days we were there, 2 nights, 3 days, was to like, you don't know where you're at right now, do you? And I get to explain to them. And then like Janine would be in our room with the kids, and like I'd just pop in with strangers. I'm like, check this thing out. Like, I'm pretty sure this was his bedroom. And then I went back, and 2 years later, that Netflix documentary comes out, and I watched it. I was like, oh man, I shouldn't have been there.
Yeah, that's the crazy thing, because it truly is in the middle of nowhere. It's in the middle of nowhere. So that's why it's so phenomenal. Like, it's crazy that, like, out of every single place you could have gone to traveling in the United States, you ended up at Warren Jeffs' house. and didn't even know it, because people are staying there, but they're staying there for a very specific reason of like, this is Warren Jeff's house. It's I just want to see where he lives.
It's like morbid tourism, I think.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. That's blacklisted tourism. That's crazy. Wow. But so random. But it's did you get like a kind of like a, did you ever feel scared type sense?
No. You mean like walking around the town or at the B&B?
So what I mean is basically, I guess because maybe you didn't really realize, the full extent of what had happened there. But, when I go to places like that, I get this, for example, I went to World Youth Day, which is like a big Catholic conference of like all the teenagers in the world. I went to Poland in 2016, and I went to Auschwitz. And this is kind of like, it's just something like another example to kind of bring up like what my mental was feeling.
Sure.
We went to Auschwitz, and Auschwitz is a really weird place to go visit.
Yeah, my wife was just there a couple weeks ago.
Yes, and like because you get the sense we're walking around.
Evil was committed here.
Yes, and like people are taking photos and stuff like that, and it just felt really weird and really off, and I just felt really uncomfortable the whole time that I was there.
I didn't feel uncomfortable, and I think the reason is because the things that happened there, and now I know, and if I would have known what I know now, maybe my feelings would have been different. The sexual exploitation that happens in those cults is terrible. One of the things that you got to give Christianity credit for is whenever a cult busts off of us, we don't really murder people, right?
Right. Hopefully.
Like, no, but we don't.
No, yeah,
Dude, there's no, like, FLDS is a terrible religion, but at the same time, they're not strapping suicide vests to themselves.
No.
Blowing things up, right?
You're 100%.
So when I'm in places like that, now granted, if I would have known what I know now about Jeff's, I mean, you can't, if you watch that documentary and you hear that audio tape, it's disturbing. And I probably never would have booked the place, but no, I never felt, and the folks there, and like as far as fearing for your safety, again, they exploit their own kind. They're not really, I don't know if they're very evangelical.